it's Mo. Just when you think you have stopped collecting books and you only have a few books that you recently acquired that you haven't talked to your channel about, someone gives you a bunch of books. I can't complain. My mother recently gave me a bunch of books. She's been going through her stuff, and whenever she sees a book that she either thinks was mine or thinks I would like, she puts it aside for me. She recently dropped off a big pile of books for me, and I have also acquired some books through little free libraries and other means recently that I want to share here. This is going to be one of those videos where I do actually have some footage from an older recently acquired books that I never showed you, so I will insert those somewhere in this video as well. Hopefully this is the last big pile of books that I'm going to accumulate for 2021, and also hopefully in 2022 I'll be a little more selective about what I get. I have a lot of books that I still need to read, and I'm trying to pare down the amount of books that come into the house and get put on the shelf, and try to read more books so that I can get them out of the house, or at least off the shelf. Let's start with books that I haven't talked to you about yet, but I got at book sales over the summer. I got another Toni Morrison book to add to my new Toni Morrison collection. This is Song of Solomon. So I don't know what this book is about, but I don't need to know because I just know that I want to pick up all Toni Morrison books, and so now I have Song of Solomon to add to that list. Another book that I picked up at a book sale is Freshwater by BXXKMas. Now, I've heard nothing but good things about BXXKMas' writing, but I think people are a little split on this particular book. I believe this is about a person who has an inner dialogue with their other parts, alternative selves, and they influence the actions of the person and they influence the events of the book. A book that Simon Savage recommends, Swimming Lessons by Claire Fuller. Now, Claire Fuller, I think, just wrote a book that was longlisted for the Booker Prize, but this one sounds really interesting. It's about a family, a wife, 2 children, and a husband, and the wife leaves or goes missing, and she leaves notes for the family. The family starts finding these notes after she's been gone for a certain amount of time, and they start kind of tracing back like why she left or what happened to her and what the kind of role of the family was in that leaving. It sounds really interesting. It's a little bit long for me. It sounds like just such a really fascinating premise, and I like this copy. I thought it was cool. Moving on to books that I did not get in a free little library, but I purchased used, are The Story of My Teeth by Valeria Luiselli. So I can't remember what booktuber I saw review this book. Usually when I see a book that I'm interested in, I will put it on my want to read shelf on Goodreads. Maybe I'll note it down in my bullet journal, or maybe I'll even make a note of it somewhere a little bit more prominent so I remember to get it. I'll usually look it up on Goodreads. I might look up some reviews, but I'll wait to find the book until it comes into my life. So a lot of these books I've found at free little libraries, a lot of them I found at book sales, but I'll wait to find it. This was a rare case. When I heard about it, it sounded amazing, and I went and purchased it from a used bookstore immediately. So I'm really excited to get to this one. It also has just some interesting papers in the middle. I'm not sure if those kind of depict the different chapters or the different sections of the book, but this one sounds fascinating. I purchased the next book, The Axeman's Jazz, in the Julie Smith Skip Langdon series. I've been reading these all year. I bought one for 25 cents at my local used bookstore. That was like 4th in the series. So I purchased the first in the series used online, read that one, and then when I was finished reading it, I went ahead and picked up the second in the series. The same thing happened with the Jersey Shore mystery series. I got the 3rd book in a little free library, totally by chance, but I was so excited to find a cozy mystery series set on the Jersey Shore in the town next to where I live. So I went online and purchased used the 1st and the 2nd in the series so that I could read those when I have time. In little free libraries, recently I found Ghosts by Dali Aderton. I think this is actually a story about a woman who has sex with a ghost. I'm not quite sure, but I I've heard some really interesting reviews of this, and I actually really liked the other cover that exists of this. This is one that, like I said, I don't know that much about, but I'm really interested to try out. This was on the free shelf in my local public library. It is With the Fire on High by Elizabeth Acevedos. I've never read any of her work, and this is not usually people's favorite, but it has to do with a young woman coming to grips with her being a teenage mom and wanting to have a career in food, all while struggling against societal norms and having to deal with high school and all of that. I think since I read Like Water for Chocolate, this might be a nice companion to that. I don't think this has magical realism elements, but I think the kind of recipes and similarities of food and life are going to be apparent in this book as well. Another arc that I got in a little free library is Sorrowland by River Solomon. I've never read any of their books, but this one actually sounds really interesting. It's about a pregnant woman who escapes a cult and decides to have her children in the woods. It's kind of a apocalyptic future slash magical story with death and destruction and social commentary. One more arc that I recently picked up from a little free library is Black Rabbit Hall by Eve Chase. Now, right after I picked this up, I heard someone talking about another Eve Chase book. This one just looked really interesting. I loved the cover. I thought it was really pretty. And honestly, I don't remember what I read about it that I thought was interesting, but it looked like a fun one to try, and I was just on a little streak of getting arcs, so I figured I'd pick this one up as well. Another booktube darling I found at a little free library is Memorial by Brian Washington. Now, this one I wouldn't have picked up if I hadn't seen it for free in a little free library. It's about two men in a long-term relationship who their relationship is kind of failing and they have to go through some stressors, and that doesn't seem like it's going to make anything better. One of them has to travel to see family while other members of their family are visiting, and it really puts a strain on the dynamic of the relationship, but maybe that's what the relationship needs. This seems a little too serious, contemporary, serious gay for my tastes, but everyone really loves it. I was able to find Emily St. John Mandel's other book, Station 11, at a Goodwill earlier this year or late last year, but when I saw The Glass Hotel, I wanted to pick that up as well. It's a beautiful hardcover copy that I found in a little free library, and this just seems like an interesting sci-fi story. Some people really didn't like this compared to Station 11. I feel like it's one of those books where if you like Station 11, you won't like this one, but if you like this one, you probably won't like Station 11. Now I have them both, so I can see which category I fit in. Another booktube favorite that is, I believe, just literary fiction and people talk about all the time, but I really didn't have any idea what it was about, is Gilead by Marilyn Robinson. This is kind of a historical fiction set in 1956, and it's a family drama. Now, this is definitely not the kind of book that I normally read, but it is very short, and I liked the hardcover edition. You know, it's one of those ones that, like, if I hadn't found it in a little free library, I would never have bought it, but since I did, I might as well give it a try. The Oxford Book of Caribbean Short Stories, edited by Stuart Brown and John Wickham. I found this in a little free library, and it has a lot of short stories written by Caribbean authors and set in different Caribbean countries. I haven't read any Caribbean literature, so I am super excited to try out a lot of these short stories, hopefully find some really cool Caribbean authors, and have a jumping off point to read more Caribbean writing. Quite a few of the books that my mom brought me are high fantasy books. Now, as we all know, I don't read high fantasy, but I used to. So something you may not know about me is when I was a teenager and a young adult, I enjoyed some high fantasy. I may have even read some Pern in there. A lot of the high fantasy books that I've read in my life have not made it onto my Goodreads or my all-time read list because honestly, I just don't remember reading them. These books are all well loved, so maybe these were books that I've read and maybe they're not. I have no idea what they're about, and I seriously doubt I'm going to be reading them anytime soon. They're probably going to make their way out of the house pretty quickly or into the basement in my basement box of books. This is Dragonwing, Volume 1, Belgraph the Sorcerer, Dragon Prince, Book 1, and The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan. Now, The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan is a really beloved high fantasy, and I know a lot of people on BookTube really enjoyed this one, but coming in at 814 pages, I seriously doubt I'll ever get to it. A little bit along the same lines, one of the books that my mother brought me is Alien Creatures. This seems to be mostly a picture coffee table book about different alien creatures. So there's The Day the Earth Stood Still and other, oh, there's R2-D2 and other various monsters and alien creatures from books and movies. This will be a really fun one to look through and read through, so I'm excited that I got this one back in my collection. The last book that my mom brought me was The Tale of the Body Thief by Anne Rice. I've read quite a few Anne Rice books. Not all of them are on my Goodreads because, again, I read them so long ago, and a lot of them I don't really remember. R.I.P. Anne Rice. I was really sad to see that she had passed semi-unexpectedly, and I am considering doing an Anne Rice reread of An Interview with a Vampire. I'm not sure if I read The Body Thief or not, but I'm not unhappy to have this one. A book that I found recently in a little free library that I was super excited about is Louise Penny's Still Life. This is the first in her crime series. I know that Kevy loves this one, but a lot of other booktubers that I watch love this one too, and this is one that I'm stoked to get to pretty soon. It is a little bit on the long side, but mass market paperbacks are usually pretty easy to get through. Another mass market paperback that I found in a little free library is called Rest in Pieces by Rita Mae Brown. Now, I thought Rita Mae Brown was on my Goodreads want to read list for these cat mysteries. I've read quite a few cat mysteries and I always like to pick them up. She's actually on my want to read list for Ruby Fruit Jungle, which is a classic queer story. So she wrote queer novels and she wrote cat mystery novels. If that doesn't sound perfect, I don't know what does. In a little free library, I picked up The Danish Girl by David Ebersoff. This is a book that is based on the true story of a painter and how they transitioned. I think that there's probably some real problems with this book. I don't know anything about the author, but I have a feeling that they are not trans, and I don't know anything about the real life events, but I do know that a movie was made of this, and since that movie's been made, it's definitely come into question whether it was appropriate to be made or not. I picked it up because I am interested in queer stories, and I am interested in trans stories, but I think I need to research this author a little more and see how it was that they came to write this book. I hate movie covers, but when I saw Kindred by Octavia Butler in a little free library, I wanted to grab it. I am interested in reading this book, which has a time travel element. It is about a young woman in the present, but I think that present is somewhere in the 70s or 80s, who travels back in time and helps a young boy living on a plantation. When she continues to travel back through time and follow the timeline of this young boy, she sees that the connection between her and this slaveholding plantation is more than what she thought. I'm really interested to read this one. It sounds like it's going to be a heavy Octavia Butler. Maybe all her books are a little bit heavy, but I've loved the two books that I've read from her so far. I would love to find this book with a different cover edition. I don't know if it's a movie cover edition. It's not my style aesthetically, so I'd love to find a different copy of this one. Next, onto a book that I love the cover of, but I have no idea what it's about. This book is called Cargo of Eagles by Marjorie Ellingham. I know that she's a contemporary of Christie and a crime author, and this one just was so cool and looked so neat. I really wanted to pick it up. It's really short. Ooh, it has a map. Ooh, map. After reading out of Africa earlier this year, I'm super interested to read more Isaac Dennison. I've picked up a few of their works. She is also known as Karen Blixen, that's her given name, but she often wrote under the pen name Isaac Dennison. This is called Last Tales, 12 Tales of Enchantment. Last Tales, I think, is a companion to her Gothic Tales book, which were Gothic short stories, so I assume that Last Tales is similar to that. It looks like it has quite a few short stories in it, and I'm interested to maybe dip in and out of this one in 2022. Before reading The Fight by Norman Mailer, I had never read any of his work, but my husband likes his writing and had read a few other books by him, so when we saw two Norman Mailer books recently, we picked them up. One was at the Asbury Park Book Cooperative, and one was in a little free library. Armies of the Night, I believe, is a war novel. This version has a really cool cover. And An American Dream, I think, is about a disillusioned, middle-aged man. Both of these books sound kind of depressing, and I don't know when I'll get to them, but I did really enjoy Norman Mailer's writing style, and I would like to see how he tackles some fiction after reading a nonfiction book of his. Hannah at Hannah's Books recommended Ex Libris, and this is by Anne Federman, and I didn't realize that this author also wrote The Spirit Catches You and You Fall Down, which I absolutely loved. That's a nonfiction book, and this is also a nonfiction book about confessions of a common reader. So I think this is just some musings and short essays on her reading life and her love of reading, but I was super excited to see that it was an author that I knew and recommended by Hannah. My mother also gave me, but was not one of the books that I had read, this book called The Road to Quran. This is a book by Jill Kerr Conway, and she is an Australian author, and she is a native Australian. This is her memoir about her life. It says, a woman's exclusively clear-sighted memoir of growing up in Australia. After reading All the Birds Singing, I'm definitely interested in more works from Australian authors, both nonfiction and fiction. I was so excited to find a Gregory MacDonald book in a little free library. This is Fletch and the Widow Bradley, and I've been working my way through all the Fletch books. This is a prequel to the books that I've already read, and I was reading them in publication order. I think I'm going to continue to read them in publication order, so this one I won't get to for a while, but I'm going to add it to my Fletch collection, and it'll be there when I'm ready to read it. I love these New York review books, and I have to say, I'm a little, I'm gonna go hipster, but I totally was there before most of BookTube caught on, I feel like. Ever since 2020, I've been picking up these editions because they're so cute, and now I see more and more BookTubers picking them up, so I think I was a little ahead of the trend, and I'm a little proud of that. All the books that I've read in this series so far have been really interesting. I think the New York Book Review books have been very specially curated and selected, so anytime I see one in a little free library or at a book sale, I definitely pick one up. Almost every time there's something that I want to read. Only occasionally have I put one back and not brought it home with me. This one is called Autobiography of a Corpse, and it's by Sigismund. I can't even begin to pronounce that last name. And I'm not sure what this one is about, but I remember being really interested when I picked it up. Also, the cover is amazing. I've only ever read one Herman Hesse book, but that one I've read multiple times. That was Siddhartha. I found Beneath the Wheel by Herman Hesse in a little free library. I think this is a coming-of-age novel, so I'm super interested to get through this one. It's really short, and if it's anything like the compelling writing in Siddhartha, I'm sure I'll like it. One that I'm less sure I'll like or even get to is All Quiet on the Western Front. This is a modern classic, a wartime book, but it is from a German author and from a German perspective, I believe. So that's the only thing that I've ever heard about this book that really, really wanted to make me read it. Seeing it now and finding it in a little free library, it is a novella. It is under 175 pages. That makes me more likely to get to it. The last book that I have for this recently acquired books is a BookTube darling. It is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I was not interested in this this book at all until I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and I ended up really, really loving that book. So I'm excited to read anything else by Taylor Jenkins Reid I can get my hands on. So those are all my recently acquired books, mostly found in little free libraries, some of which were gifts from my mother or bestowed on me by my mother. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you've ever read any of these books, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks so much. Bye.